Okay, hello, good morning, good evening, and good night, everyone. Whenever you're watching this video, we are from group 1. We are going to presentation our group discussion, and we will talk about approaching assessment. So our group conducted with Aghnia, Syamsa, Aghnia, Daffa, and me as a moderator. Okay, for the first slide, next slide. Next slide, okay. This one we will talk about in this discussion, and we will talk about table of content. For the first is what is text, and the next is assessing and teaching will be performed by Syamsa, and approaching to language testing will be performed with Daffa, and perform assessment will be performed with Aghnia. So the next. Okay, the next is a test about what is text. One, text is a simple terms in the method of the measuring a person's ability knowledge. And if we will talk about what is the definition largely about test, the first one is test is a method. It is an instrument, a set technique, procedure, and items that requires. And the second one is the test must measure. Some tests measure general ability, while others focus on very specific objective. And the third one is about the test measure individuality, ability, knowledge, or performance. The testers need to understand who a test taker are. And the fourth is a test measures performance, but the results imply the test takers, but the result imply the test taker's ability or to use concept linguistic competence. And the last one is about a text measure a given domains. In the case of proficiency text, even though actual performance test involves only a sampling of skills. Next. Okay, next will be performance by Syamsa. Times is yours.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. And then we will discuss about assessing and teaching. Uh, Tests are prepared administrative procedure that occur at identifiable, identifiable, identifiable times in a curriculum when learners master their faculties of peak performance, knowing that their response are being measured and evaluated. Okay, you can see this picture. Okay, I will explain about this picture. At the same time, during this practice activity, teachers are indeed observing students' performance and making various evaluation of each learner. How did the performance compare to previous performance? Which aspect of the performance were better than of others? And then, is the learner performing up to an expected potential? How does the performance compare to that of other in the same learning community? Uh, in the ideal classroom, all this observation fit into the way the teacher provide instruction to its student. Okay, jadi I will use bahasa to make sure you are really understand. Okay. Dalam teaching, seorang guru itu sudah termasuk melakukan assessment. Jadi guru bisa melakukan asesmen kapanpun ketika kegiatan teaching berlangsung. Kemudian di dalam asesmen itu juga terdapat dalamnya juga termasuk tes yang nanti the test will discuss more deeper after this. Okay, next slide. Okay. And then one way to begin untangling lexial conundrum created by discussing among test, assessment, and teaching to distinguish between informal and formal assessment. Okay. Okay. The first informal assessment can take a number of form, can take a number or form, starting with identical unplanned comments and response along with coaching and other impromptu feedback to the student. For example, including saying, nice job, good work. Did you say can or can? I think you mean you say you broke the glass. Or not you break the glass. Or you give emoticon smile in your in student LJK lembar kerja. Okay, and then informal assessment does not stop here there. A good deal of a teacher informal assessment is aimed in a classroom test designed to elicit performance without recording result and make fixed judgment about the student competence. Example, at this end of the continuum, our marginal commitment. Sorry. Example, at this end of the continuum, our marginal comment on a paper. Responding to a draft of essay, advice about how to better pronounce a word, a suggestion for a strategy for compensating for a reading difficulty, and showing how to modify a student not taking to better remember of the content of a lecture. Okay, and the second is formal assessment. Formal assessment are exercise or procedures specifically designed to tap into storehouse of skill and knowledge. They are systematic, planned sampling technique construct to give teacher and student an appraisal of student achievement. To extend the informal assessment is informal assessment same as a test. We can say that all tests are formal assessment, but not all formal assessment is testing. For example, you might use student as a journal or portfolio of material as a formal assessment of the attainment of certain, of course, objective, but it's problematic to call those two procedure tests. Tests are sorry. Tests are usually relative time constraint and draw on limited sample of behavior. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then we will talk about formative and summative assessment. Uh, Another useful distinct distinction to bear in mind in function of attention assessment. How is the procedure to be used? Two functions are commonly identified in the literature: formative and summative assessment. Okay, most of our classroom assessment is formative assessment. Uh, Formative assessment is evaluating student uh, in the process of forming their competence and skill with the goal of helping them to continue grow process. The key to success information is delivery by a teacher and internalization by the student of appropriate feedback on performance. Uh, with an eye towards the future con- continuation of learning. And then sub- summative summative assessment. Uh, aims to measure or summarize what a student has carved and typically occurs at the end of a course or unit of instruction. A summation what a student has learned in place looking back and taking stock how well the student has accomplished. Okay. One of the problem with prevailing attitude towards testing is the view that all tests are summative. At various points in your past, sorry. Okay. Sorry. Maybe back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you for Samsa for your time. So maybe you can the next slide. Okay, our next discussion is about norm reference and criterion reference will be explained well by Daffa. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time. And the first is we will talk about norm reference. So norm reference tests are standardized tests like the Scholastic Aptitude Test or SAT, or the Test of English as a Foreign Language or TOEFL, intended to be administered administered to large audiences with result efficiently disseminate to test takers. And the purpose in such tests is to place test taker along mathematical continuum in rank order. So based on the explanation, so norm reference is each test taker score is interpreted in relation to a mean or average score, median, standard deviation, and percentile rank. So this kind of test must have a fixed, predetermined response in a format that can be scored quickly at a minimum expense. Money and efficiency are primary concern in this test. And then we will talk about the criterion reference test. So criterion reference tests, on the other hand, are designed to give test taker feedback, usually in the form of grades on specific course or lesson objectives. Classroom tests involving the students in only one class and connected to a curriculum are typical of criterion reference testing. In a criterion reference test, the distribution of students' scores across a continuum may be of a little concern as long as the instrument assesses appropriate objectives. So in language, in language assessment with an audience of classroom language teacher and teacher in training, and with is emphasis on classroom-based assessment as opposed to standardized large-scale testing, criterion reference testing is of more prominent interest to than norm reference testing. Next, please. Next slide. So the next is approaches to language testing, a brief history. So a brief history of language testing over the past half century will serve as a backdrop to an understanding of classroom-based testing. Historically, language testing trends and practice have followed the shifting sense of teaching methodology. For example, in the 1950s, an era of behaviorism and special attention to contrastive analysis, testing focused on specific language elements such as the phonological, grammar, and lexical contrast between two languages. In the 1970s and 1918, communicative theories of language brought with them a more integrative view of testing, in which specialists claim that the whole of the communicative event was considerably greater than the sum of its linguistic elements. Next, please. Yeah, okay. The next is talk about this discrete point. So discrete point tests are constructed on the assumption that language can be broken down into into its component parts and that those parts can be tested successfully. These components are the skills of listening, speaking, reading, writing, and various units of language, uh, of phonology or graphology, morphology, lexicon, syntax, and discourse. And then integrative testing. So Euler argue that language competence is a unified set of interacting abilities that cannot be tested separately. His claim was that communicative competence is so global and requires such integration, hence the term of integrative testing. That is, that it cannot be captured in additive tests or grammar, reading, vocab, and other discrete points of language. The example of integrative test is clause test and dictations. Next, please. Okay, the next is communicative language testing. So communicative testing presented challenges to test designers as as we will subsequent chapters of this book. Test constructor began to identify the kinds of tasks that language learners were called upon to perform. The context for tests were extraordinarily widely varied that the sampling of tests for assessment procedure needed to be validated by what language user actually do with language. So I think that's all from me. Back to moderator.
Thank you, Daffa, for your nice explanation. So the next performance is about performance-based assessment will be explained well by Aghnia. times is yours.
Thank you very much. So this is about performance-based assessment. Performance-based assessment of language typically involves oral production, written production, open-ended responses, integrated performance across skill areas, and group performance and other interactive tasks. So such assessment is using much time and effort and the expense too. Need more about expenses to make the assessment, but it will be how to say it? I will change itu bahasa akan terbayar semua kerja keras guru itu dalam membuat assessment ketika muridnya dapat itu menjawab assessment tersebut dan jawaban tersebut benar, apalagi siswanya juga paham. Baik dalam bentuk tulisan ataupun audio dan sebagainya. Yang selanjutnya adalah current issues in classroom testing. So there are three issues in the classroom testing. First is new views on intelligence. Yang di sini adalah poin-poinnya: spatial intelligence, physical intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal, and dialectic. But this is from Gardner. He accepted the traditional conceptualized of linguistic intelligence and logical mathematical intelligence on which standardized IQ tests are based about that. But he include 5 that yang tertampilkan di PPT. Dia menambahkan ini, di mana spatial intelligence, the ability to find your way around the environment, and to form mental images of reality. Yang kedua, musical intelligence, the ability to perceive and create pitch and rhythmic patterns. Body kinesthetic intelligence, fine motor movements, athletic powers. Next, interpersonal intelligence, ability to understand others and how they feel. And last, interpersonal intelligence, the ability to understand oneself and to develop a sense of self-identity. And next is computer-based testing. We move into traditional and alternative assessment first. The traditional one, we can membedakan, differentiate it with this. One choose standardized exam, di mana alternatif itu continuous long-term assessment. Jadi nggak hanya satu kali aja assessmentnya, tapi bisa dengan waktu yang panjang atau berulang kali gitu. If the traditional time multiple choice format, then alternative can untype free responses format. Jadi model assessmentnya itu tidak hanya multiple choice, tapi bermacam-macam. And next is scores suffice for feedback. Seperti tradisional, langsung dapat nilainya jebret gitu. And the alternative individualized feedback and respect. Jadi kalau yang di alternatif dapat feedback individual, kemudian diberi kayak saran lagi seperti itu untuk memperbaikinya. And next about this is keep in mind these basic principles. Actually, there are a lot of basic principles, but we add 4 in here. Periodic assessment, formal and informal, can increase in motivation by serving as milestones of student progress. Second, appropriate assessment, aid in the reinforcement and retention of information. The third, assessments can confirm areas of strength and pinpoint areas needing further work. And fourth, assessment can provide a sense of periodic closure to models within a curriculum. We'll give back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all. So the last one, I will give some summary of our discussion is about assessment. So assessment divided become two, informal assessment and formal assessment. So in informal is designed for just take a number, and about the formal designed to skills and knowledge. So the model is about summative assessment and formative assessment. In formative assessment, the collecting data about the extent student progressing, and how about summative assessment that the use of test at the end of the certain approach. Jadi kalau misalnya di formative assessment itu di mana nanti para guru itu bisa monitoring perkembangan para siswanya, sedangkan kalau di summative itu adalah terakhir tes. Jadi waktu ujian terakhir ketika semua bab sudah selesai diajarkan, misalnya bab 1 sudah kelar semua diajarkan, kemudian diadakan tes kembali. Okay. Okay, maybe this is for all for us. Thank you. If you have any question, let's get discussed in class.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.